Republican Congressman Mike Waltz of the great state of Florida, member of the House Armed Services, Foreign Affairs, and Intelligence Committees, also a combat decorated Green Beret. Great to have you on the program. As we await the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, there are 5 holdouts in the House right now. You're not on that list. Where do you stand?
Well, Harris, I don't know how much more evidence the American people need to see to warrant opening, or frankly for my colleagues to see, to warrant opening an impeachment inquiry. This isn't an impeachment vote. It's an inquiry that will have greater standing in the courts. But between whistleblowers, FBI informants, allegations that both Biden and Hunter received millions of dollars in exchange for changing policy to fire a prosecutor, an interview with the prosecutor saying he was fired in exchange for these monies. At a minimum, I think we need to look at whether the taxes were paid on it, whether there was money laundering, whether there was illegal foreign lobbying in violation of FARA. There is a lot of exposure here. And in addition to the emails and the texts of oligarchs thanking Hunter for time with his dad, of Hunter saying, my dad's sitting right here and you better pay up. Look, there is so much smoke here that I certainly think it warrants a vote to get to the point to see if there's fire and to see if the person, Vice President Biden, charged with policy over China, Russia, and Ukraine, actually changed policy in exchange for this bribery scheme.
Yeah, and I mean, all of it really, if you just kind of narrow it down, comes to national security. Was the former vice president, via his son, put in a capitulating position where other countries, entities on the other side of those foreign business deals might be able to put some pressure on him or expect to get something in return? That has to do with how safe we stay as a nation, because depending on who those people are. And by the way, you know, you've got Ukraine, you've got China on that list.
Yeah, Harris, I don't know. I mean, I don't know a business person out there that doesn't expect something in exchange for millions of dollars. So what did they get for that money? And we know through these shell companies, I don't know what government official or vice president of the United States needs dozens and dozens of shell companies registered in the name of their relatives. But we know the money went from these oligarchs and these officials to these shell companies and out to Biden family members. And we know that at least to some extent, policy was affected, policy was changed, and they happen to be from the same countries that Biden was in charge of from a policy perspective.
There you go. And that's the connection that the American people really need to understand. And since one of those countries on the list was Ukraine, and as I understand it, also Russia was on that list potentially as well. With those two countries at war right now, where does that put us and our president at the table to try to bring peace? Have a lot of questions. I'm expecting the speaker to come out at any moment because they have been testing mics and doing the shot. We're getting close. I want to ask you about those 5 Republicans who don't agree that there's enough evidence to move forward. Representative Don Bacon, Nebraska; Ken Buck, Colorado; Brian Fitzpatrick, Pennsylvania; French Hill, Arkansas; and Mike Lawler in New York. What is it with the holdouts? What are they looking at?
Well, look, the Democrats and others will say, no, there's nothing there. This is all about politics. Actually, if you look at the politics of it, President Trump was at his highest approval rating during impeachment. Bill Clinton's approval rating was in his 60s during impeachment. This is about getting to the bottom of whether
those
we have
are
the
Republican holdouts. I understand why Democrats don't want this, but why not members of your own party?
But my point is, this isn't, and nor should it be, about politics. History shows the politics may, if we don't do this the right way, work against us. That's why Biden is establishing an impeachment war room. But this is about getting to the truth. This is about transparency. Was there obstruction of justice? And was, at the highest levels of governments, an influence scheme that influenced American policies, not just for New Zealand or the United Kingdom or some allied country, but for some of the most difficult and adversarial countries that the United States faces in the world.
You know, I want to just take this a little broader now. And recap, if we can, for our audience. If you were just tuning in, Representative Mike Waltz of Florida has joined me as we are covering the breaking news now. The House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, is set to stand up and tell us exactly what he meant when he told Fox News earlier today that they are at the point of the next logical step in the movement toward an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. So with all of that said, what are the next logical steps? And do you think at this point you can bring on board those 5 GOP holdouts?
Look, I think so. I would look forward to having the chairman, Jamie Comer of Oversight, Jim Jordan, chairman of Judiciary, really lay out for the conference. There's been so much going on between IRS whistleblowers, FBI whistleblowers, the bank records. I mean, look, 160 suspicious activity reports from Treasury, the bank records that we have of these LLCs. I think once you lay it all out for folks, it's incontrovertible that we should go to the next step. What I want to get is the actual bank records of the Bidens themselves, which they're going to fight in court, the overseas bank records, which is a whole different process. And what this inquiry will do is give us greater standing to actually get those. It's one thing for Republicans to be asking. It's another thing to be asking as part of a constitutional process. And I think once we lay that out, I'm confident people will get on board.
We've also just received a White House statement. Congressman.
Well, I think this was the right call on behalf of Speaker McCarthy. We have laws in place, Harris, whether it's racketeering, bribery, foreign lobbying, money laundering, to prevent foreign entities, foreign officials, and foreign business interests from being able to influence elected officials at the highest level of our government. And the reason Speaker McCarthy is putting Chairman Smith, who is the chairman of Ways and Means, he has oversight of IRS, Jim Jordan of Judiciary, oversight of DOJ, and then Jamie Comer, which has oversight of basically everything else. It's not just President Biden's involvement, but was there a cover-up, which we're hearing from very credible whistleblowers from DOJ that was not allowing the IRS to do the investigation that the American people deserve. So there are so many layers to this. I think Ari's right that we're going to move forward judiciously, responsibly, and we will get to the truth.
Just before McCarthy spoke, White House spokesman Ian Sam said this: opening impeachment despite zero evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden is simply red meat for the extreme right wing so they can keep baselessly attacking him. So Ari had said previously, Congressman Waltz, that this was powerful, that this was strong. Is this enough to bring along those 5 holdouts among the GOP? I mean, they're going to take a vote after this, this trio of chairmen, Comer, Jordan, and Smith, lay this all out, which is what you called for earlier this hour. Is all of it enough to move those 5? You're going to need them.
Look, I mean, I think the evidence already is overwhelming. I doubt that people have had the opportunity to actually read these suspicious activity reports. It's one thing. I was a former business owner to get one, if you're doing overseas transactions, to get 160 when they see who all of these shell companies are registered to in the Biden family, grandchildren that are receiving money. I think it's just common sense to say, and we're seeing this in polling now as well, not just Republicans, but independents and Democrats, to say it warrants taking the investigation to the next level. No one is saying we have an impeachment vote tomorrow. We're saying it's a responsible thing to do, regardless of the politics, to look into this further and have the relevant committees have the power of an inquiry to demand answers.
Look, I want to hit one more thing with you, and it has to do with just kind of the substance of where we are. So you've got 3 Republican-led investigations going on. You've got this call by the Speaker of the House now to consider impeachment inquiry into President Biden. And Senator Lindsey Graham talked with me yesterday about the very real terrorist threat that he sees unfolding because of Biden's policies along the border. And some in your party have said perhaps he needs impeaching over that very thing. So I add that to the mix. Let's hear from Senator Graham next, and then I'll come back to you.
2 weeks ago, a smuggler associated with ISIS was bringing people here. The broken border is not only bad domestic policy, not only creates financial problems and human heartache, it is an open invitation to terrorists to come and hit us again. I've never seen a higher threat than I do right now. It's just a matter of time till we get hit again unless the administration changes their policy.
All right, I'll go back quickly now to Congressman Waltz and your response.
Well, I agree with the senator. I mean, the gross negligence on the border is a direct threat to national security, plus the humanitarian issue. But, Harris, I would add to that, if we're going after gross negligence, what we're discovering on Afghanistan and how that has put this country in danger. Everything from the diplomats in Kabul warned President Biden and Blinken what was going to happen to unclear rules of engagement that now has 13 service members dead. So if we're going to go down the path of gross negligence as well, there's a lot to add to that plate.
Your follow-up thought, sorry.
Yeah, September 12th. I mean, one of the reasons we were attacked was because people came into America from foreign countries to attack us. And we shouldn't forget that. We have hardened so many assets. We have done so much good since September 11th to prevent major attacks. But what good does all the hardening of assets do? We've got a soft underbelly that just lets would-be terrorists into our country. Of course, this is a threat to national security. It's plain and obvious to see. And it's another area where the Biden administration has been woefully insufficient.
It's so chilling to hear you start with September 12th. Because it really does indicate that we might have been more fortunate than smart in the way that we have moved as a country and the man in the White House. Very chilling. Gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break. I appreciate you both being with me in focus as the news breaks.